What if everything you think you know about yourself is just an elaborate performance? What if the person you see in the mirror each morning is nothing more than a carefully constructed mask, hiding the most profound truth of your existence? You wake up, you brush your teeth, you go to work, you interact with people, you come home, you sleep. Day after day, the same patterns, the same responses, the same version of yourself. But deep inside, something whispers that this isn't all there is. Something calls to you from the depths, urging you to look beyond the surface, beyond the comfortable illusions you've built around your identity. Carl Jung, the revolutionary Swiss psychiatrist who dared to map the unexplored territories of the human psyche, discovered something that would shake the foundations of how we understand ourselves. He found that beneath every polished exterior, every social role, every carefully crafted personality, lies what he called the most fundamental human desire, the desperate, almost sacred need to encounter our true self. But here's what Jung realized that most people never do. The journey to your authentic self isn't a pleasant stroll through a garden of self-discovery. It's a descent into the underworld of your own psyche, where you must face everything you've spent your life avoiding, denying, and projecting onto others. Jung called this hidden aspect of ourselves the shadow. Not just your flaws or your mistakes, but the entirety of who you are when nobody is watching, when all pretenses fall away, when you're stripped of every role and expectation that society has placed upon you. The shadow contains not only your repressed darkness, but also your unlived potential, your buried creativity, your authentic power that you've been too afraid to claim. Most people, Jung observed, live their entire lives without ever truly meeting themselves. They navigate the world wearing what he termed the persona, a mask so convincing that even they forget it's not their real face. The persona is necessary for social functioning, but it becomes a prison when you mistake it for your true identity. Think about it. How often do you catch yourself saying what you think others want to hear? How frequently do you suppress your real thoughts, your genuine emotions, your authentic responses because they don't fit the image you've created of who you should be? How many times have you looked in the mirror and felt like a stranger was staring back at you? This disconnection from your true self doesn't just create psychological discomfort. It creates what Jung called neurosis, a fundamental split in the psyche where the conscious mind and the unconscious are at war with each other. You feel anxious, but don't know why. You feel empty, despite having everything you thought you wanted. You feel like you're living someone else's life, going through the motions of an existence that doesn't truly belong to you. Jung discovered that this internal conflict manifests in every area of your life. In your relationships, you attract people who mirror your unlived aspects, your disowned parts. The qualities that irritate you most in others are often the very qualities you've rejected in yourself. The person who seems too aggressive might be reflecting your own unexpressed assertiveness. The one who appears too emotional might be showing you the feelings you've learned to suppress. Your career choices, your lifestyle, even your daily habits become elaborate defenses against encountering who you really are. You choose safety over authenticity, approval over truth, comfort over growth. You build a life that looks successful from the outside while feeling hollow from within. But here's where Jung's insight becomes revolutionary. He understood that the symptoms of this disconnection, the anxiety, the depression, the sense of meaninglessness, are not problems to be eliminated. They are messengers from your unconscious, calling you home to yourself. They are the psyche's way of demanding that you stop living a borrowed life and start inhabiting your own authentic existence. The process Jung called individuation is not about becoming someone new. It's about becoming who you've always been beneath the layers of conditioning, expectation, and fear. It's about integrating all the parts of yourself that you've split off, denied, or projected onto the world around you. This integration requires what Jung considered the most courageous act a human being can perform, facing your own shadow with complete honesty and compassion. Not to eliminate it, not to fix it, but to acknowledge it as part of your wholeness. Because your shadow contains not just your darkness, but your light, not just your weaknesses, but your hidden strengths. Jung noticed that people who undertake this journey of self-encounter go through predictable stages. First comes the shock of recognition, the disturbing realization that you are not who you thought you were. This can be triggered by a crisis, a loss, a failure, or simply the gradual erosion of the illusions you've maintained about yourself. Then comes what Jung called the dark night of the soul, a period where your old identity crumbles, but your new one hasn't yet emerged. This is the most dangerous phase because the temptation is to retreat back into familiar patterns, to rebuild the same mask with slightly different features. Most people abort the process here, choosing the known misery over unknown transformation. But if you persist, if you have the courage to remain in the uncertainty, something miraculous begins to happen. The fragments of your psyche start to reorganize around a new center. Jung called this center the self, with a capital S, to distinguish it from the small self of the ego. The self is your connection to something larger than your personal identity. You're linked to what Jung termed the collective unconscious, the shared wisdom of humanity. When you begin to live from this deeper self, everything changes. Your relationships become more authentic because you're no longer trying to get from others what you need to give yourself. Your work becomes an expression of your unique gifts rather than a performance for approval. Your daily life becomes infused with meaning because you're finally living in alignment with your true nature. Jung understood that this encounter with the true self is not a destination, but a process, not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. It requires what he called the transcendent function, the ability to hold the tension between opposites without collapsing into one side or the other. Light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, individuality and connection, all held in dynamic balance. But why do so few people undertake this journey? Why do most choose to live on the surface when such depth is available? Jung believed it's because encountering your true self requires you to give up the illusion of control. It demands that you surrender your carefully constructed identity and trust in something larger than your conscious will. It means accepting that you are far more complex, contradictory, and mysterious than you ever imagined. It means embracing parts of yourself that don't fit the image you've tried to maintain. It means taking responsibility not just for your conscious choices, but for your unconscious patterns, your projections, your impact on others. Most terrifying of all, it means accepting that you are both utterly unique and completely connected to all of humanity. Your individual journey toward authenticity is simultaneously a universal human experience. Your personal healing contributes to the healing of the collective psyche. Jung observed that when someone begins to live authentically, they often face resistance not just from their own conditioning, but from their environment. Family members, friends, colleagues may unconsciously try to pull them back into familiar roles. This is because your authenticity challenges others to examine their own masks, their own unlived lives. This is why Jung emphasized that the journey to the true self cannot be undertaken alone. You need what he called a temenos, a sacred container, whether that's therapy, a spiritual practice, a supportive community, or a combination of all three. You need witnesses to your transformation, mirrors that reflect your emerging authenticity. The irony that Jung discovered is that the very thing we fear most, encountering our true self, is also what we desire most deeply. Every addiction, every compulsion, every desperate search for external validation is actually a misdirected attempt to find what can only be found within. Every relationship you enter, every achievement you pursue, every experience you seek is ultimately about the longing to come home to yourself. But here's what makes Jung's understanding so radical. He realized that your true self is not something you create or achieve. It's something you uncover, something that has been there all along, waiting patiently beneath the noise of your conditioning and the chaos of your fears. Your true self is not perfect. It's not without contradictions or flaws. It's not always pleasant or socially acceptable. But it is real. It is yours. It is the only foundation upon which a meaningful life can be built. Jung believed that in our modern world, this fundamental human desire to encounter the true self has become both more urgent and more difficult to fulfill. We live in a culture that constantly tells us who we should be, how we should feel, what we should want. We're bombarded with images and messages that keep us focused on the external, on the performance, on the mask. But the call from the depths persists. It speaks to you in moments of quiet desperation, in sudden feelings of emptiness despite external success, in the recurring dream that something essential is missing from your life. It speaks through your symptoms, your struggles, your dissatisfactions. It speaks through your deepest longings and your most persistent fears. The question Jung would ask you is this: are you brave enough to answer that call? Are you willing to trade the familiar prison of your false self for the uncertain freedom of your authentic existence? Are you ready to discover that the person you've been looking for your entire life has been waiting inside you all along? Because here's what Jung understood about the true self that most spiritual and psychological traditions miss. Your authentic self is not separate from your wounds, your struggles, your imperfections. It includes all of these. Your true self is not the idealized version of who you think you should be. It's the totality of who you are: shadow and light, strength and vulnerability, wisdom and foolishness, all integrated into a living, breathing, evolving wholeness. This integration that Jung called individuation is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real. It's about dropping the exhausting effort to be someone else and embracing the relief of being yourself. It's about recognizing that your supposed flaws might actually be your hidden gifts, that your sensitivity might be your superpower, that your darkness might contain your greatest light. Jung noticed that people who successfully encounter their true self often describe it as coming home after a long journey. The relief is profound because they're finally free from the burden of maintaining a false identity. They no longer need to monitor every word, every gesture, every expression to make sure it fits their manufactured image. But this homecoming comes with a price. Living authentically means accepting responsibility for your entire life, not just the parts you're proud of. It means recognizing how your unconscious patterns have shaped your relationships, your choices, your experiences. It means owning your projections, withdrawing your blame, and taking back your power. It also means accepting that you are both deeply individual and intimately connected to all of life. Your journey toward authenticity is not about becoming more separate or special. It's about discovering your unique place in the larger web of existence, your particular way of contributing to the collective human story. Jung understood that when you encounter your true self, you also encounter what he called the self of the cosmos. You realize that your individual consciousness is not separate from universal consciousness, but a unique expression of it. Your personal healing becomes part of the healing of the world. This is perhaps the most profound aspect of Jung's understanding of the fundamental human desire to encounter the true self. He saw that this journey is not ultimately about personal fulfillment or individual happiness, although these often result. It's about participating consciously in the evolution of human consciousness itself. Every person who has the courage to face their shadow, to integrate their projections, to live from their authentic self contributes to the collective awakening of humanity. They become what Jung called an individuated being, someone who has claimed their unique gifts and stands in their own truth while remaining deeply connected to the whole. The path to this encounter with your true self is not linear. It spirals through periods of expansion and contraction, insight and confusion, progress and apparent regression. Jung called this the spiral nature of individuation. You don't solve yourself once and for all. You engage in an ongoing dialogue with the depths of your being, a lifelong conversation between your conscious will and your unconscious wisdom. And here's the beautiful paradox that Jung discovered. The more fully you become yourself, the more connected you feel to others. The more you embrace your uniqueness, the more you recognize your commonality with all humans. The more you accept your own complexity, the more compassionate you become toward the struggles of others. So the question remains, what are you waiting for? What would it look like to stop postponing your encounter with your true self? What would change in your life if you began to live from your authentic core rather than your protective mask? Jung believed that this fundamental human desire to know your true self is not optional. It's a biological imperative, a psychological necessity, a spiritual calling that will continue to knock at the door of your consciousness until you answer. You can postpone it, distract yourself from it, medicate it, or project it onto others, but you cannot escape it. Because at the deepest level, you are not just seeking to encounter your true self. Your true self is seeking to encounter you. The process works both ways. As you reach toward your authenticity reaches toward you. As you open to your wholeness opens to you. This is the mystery and the miracle that Jung spent his entire life exploring. The discovery that what you seek is also seeking you, that what you long for is also longing for you, that the journey home to yourself is simultaneously a journey toward what has been calling you all along. Your true self is not waiting for you to become worthy of it. It's not holding itself back until you're perfect enough, healed enough, or enlightened enough. It's available to you right now, in this moment, beneath whatever mask you're wearing, beyond whatever story you're telling yourself about who you are. The fundamental human desire to encounter the true self is ultimately the desire to come alive, to stop existing and start living, to stop performing and start being, to stop hiding and start shining, to stop seeking outside what can only be found within. Jung's gift to humanity was the recognition that this desire is not selfish or self-indulgent. It's the most generous thing you can do for the world, because when you live from your true self, you give others permission to do the same. When you stop hiding, you inspire others to emerge. When you embrace your authenticity, you create space for others to embrace theirs. This is the ripple effect of individuation. Your personal journey toward wholeness contributes to the collective healing of humanity. Your willingness to face your own shadow helps illuminate the shadows of the world. Your courage to be authentic gives others courage to be authentic. So perhaps the question is not whether you have the desire to encounter your true self. Jung would say that desire is built into the very fabric of your being. The question is whether you have the courage to honor that desire, to follow where it leads, to trust the process even when you can't see the destination. Because your true self is not a destination, it's a way of traveling. It's not something you achieve, it's something you are. It's not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. Not a goal to be reached, but a gift to be unwrapped moment by moment, choice by choice, breath by breath. The encounter with your true self is the most fundamental human adventure. It's the hero's journey turned inward, the quest for the treasure that was never lost, the return to the home you never really left. And Jung understood that this journey, as difficult and uncertain as it may be, is also the source of life's deepest meaning, most authentic joy, and most profound peace. Because when you finally encounter your true self, you realize you've been searching for what you already are.